Well, hello there, and welcome to this FileMaker tutorial where we're learning more about FileMaker. My name is Matt Petrowski, bringing you these tutorials over at FileMakerMagazine.com. In this video, we're taking a look at the topic of integrating FMEasySync. This is a quick and powerful answer to remote synchronization. It's also one that, for the most part, is free, other than your time. Now, I'm going to switch over to Safari and give props where props are due, and that's because syncing FileMaker databases have been around for a long time. In fact, one of the very first solutions was SyncDeck. That is still available. All of these products that I mentioned up until FMEasySync are all products that you will be paying for. Many have their pros and cons. There have been articles that have been written about what's good about some and what's bad about others and all that good stuff. Next product we have is GoZync. The next, I believe, that was out on the market, and that was from Seed Code, a product between John Sindelar and Todd Geist. Then we have the wonderful 360works MirrorSync. A lot of people talk about the pros on this one. It is a full sync. You can't do little parts as you can with GoZync. I believe you can do field by field sync with GoZync. But when it comes to something that you need to throw into your solution and you want to do it for free and easy, FMEasySync, a free open source FileMaker framework, was released by the developer Tim Dietrich. I believe that's how you say his last name. It was also awarded the FileMaker Excellence Award for FBA development, or whatever it says right here. It basically got an award for being available and for being pretty comprehensive. Now, this solution is easy to integrate if you're familiar with FileMaker Pro. If you're not familiar with FileMaker Pro, then integrating any preconceived or pre-constructed solution into your FileMaker solution can be a very frustrating process. This video attempts to make this even easier than is provided by the website itself, which we will go through the integration process. Let's take a look at the files. All right, so let's take a look at the integration process. Normally, you're going to click the download link right here. You're going to download, and once you've got that downloaded, you'll have the FMEasySync folder. Now, of course, you've got all kinds of different files, and you're going to have to take code from those files in order to integrate into your solution. And the way that FMEasySync has been broken down is there are two parts. There is the hosted file, and then there is the presumed mobile file. Now, there's nothing wrong with you actually integrating this into one single file that actually becomes the hosted file, but you then make a copy or a clone of that file and actually put that on a remote device, such as an iPad, as your remote. That simply means you're going to be integrating your hosted or the server side of things and the mobile side of things as well. There's also this easy deploy, which has been added as an add-on to the FMEasySync, which allows you to deploy a new database that ends up on the remote clients that replaces the original database that, if you've got new features, what have you, it's all pretty easy. Now, the easy way to get this in is to actually go through it, go through the documentation, which you're going to find on the EasySync website. You won't find the documentation directly within the files themselves. The files, when you open them, when I open this hosted, and there's also a password on the files that you have to use, and I believe it's admin and FMEasySync in order to get into this. And it actually didn't open up. I'd have to take a look at it. You'll find all of the information within the README, and that's where you're going to find the passwords to these two files. Now, I'm not going to open these files because you're watching this video because I like to save my subscribers time in terms of getting things into their solution. There are a number of steps, both in the hosted and the mobile, that can take you a little bit of extra time than is necessary in order to integrate the whole of the solution. Knowing that I wanted to integrate this into multiple solutions and make it much easier on myself, I created a little tool for myself, which is going to be available to the subscribers of my magazine. And this tool allows you to get solutions, not just FMEasySync, but anything that you're wanting to retain or keep in terms of a very easy process to take pre-existing code and get that into your own FileMaker solution. So let's take a look at the file. So here's where things get really confusing for your newer FileMaker developers, even your intermediates, unless you know all of the different aspects of everything that needs to be set, every little box that needs to be checked in every relationship, how the relationships need to be set, it really can take you a lot of time. In fact, my initial time, once I went through the EasySync setup, which is basically just a web page of all of the instructions that you need to follow, it actually took me a couple of hours. And I told myself, boy, this has got to be made much easier. So I, of course, made a tool for myself, something that I'm also releasing to you as a subscriber, and it definitely makes it much easier. That plus this video, you should be able to get FMEasySync into your own solution within about 30 to 45 minutes. Now you can see here there's a lot of things, a lot of steps that are needed. Well, actually I should say there's a short number of steps, but out of all of the steps, one particular step can take you the bulk of the time. That ends up being the one where you're actually having to update your relationship graph. But enough talk about all of the steps that are going on right here. Let's take a look at the tool that I've got. Switching over to FileMaker, I created for myself a little database called FM Recipes, or Recipes as it's called, sitting on my server. Now I integrated everything from the files that are available in FMEasySync, which can also be anything that you want to save. Basically what this database does is it uses the freely available Base Elements plugin. You'll have to have that installed into your copy of FileMaker Pro. But once you've got that installed, it makes it very easy to follow a step-by-step process of a recipe and integrate all of the ingredients into your FileMaker solution. So I want you to recognize how quick and easy this is going to be. And as I walk through this process, you're also going to get a sense of how easy it is to integrate FMEasySync. Now, the first thing that you need to do is you need to start with the server portion. Then you're going to integrate the mobile portion. And if you need to integrate the deployment, it will actually tell you when you need to skip and move to that. Basically, what I have here is I have a portal, and this portal has all of the different steps that are necessary in order to integrate FMEasySync. You can see that there's a copy to clipboard, which allows you to copy all of the elements that you need that you can quickly paste with all of the areas that FileMaker supports for copy and paste, custom functions, scripts, script steps, you name it. Anywhere where there is not a step to copy to clipboard, it's basically a manual step. And it even tells you that, as you can see right here, that updating the relationship graph is a manual step. Now what I did is I copied the documentation from the FMEasySync website, and I made this a pretty easy process. So if you wanted to time this, we could start from right about now. When I go up to New from Starter Solution, I'm going to choose Invoices because it's pretty complex, and I'm going to save that right here. Now integrating the EasySync on a local file is a little bit easier than doing it within a file that's already hosted, but you certainly can do that. So here's what I need to do. First, we need to add the default EasySync fields to each table that we want to sync. I'm going to click Copy to Clipboard. I'll go over to my Invoices file, and that's simply going to be a matter of the tables that you see right here minus the dashboard. I'm not going to synchronize the dashboard. So when I go to Invoices, I'll simply select a field and I'll click Command V, or I could click the paste. All I have to do is do that for Invoices data, for customers, for products, and then also for orders. So there we go. Step one is complete. Now what's really nice about the FM Recipes tool that I've made is I've got this little completed button down here, so that as I complete steps, if I have to step away, I'll know that I've completed a certain step. Also, if you already have a pre-existing database, according to the documentations, if you have existing data in the solution, you're going to need to do a replace field contents because the field created ESRecordUID, UUID, needs a valid value. Now, for every container field that you have within your solution, you're going to need a corresponding field that actually converts that binary data into base 64, which is what makes the whole syncing of binary data possible. That means any files, etc. The easy way to do that is to go into your defined database and simply click Sort by Type on any of the tables. Now the company dashboard, I'm not syncing, but we'll go and the type is already selected. As I scroll down, I can see that in Invoices, there are no containers. In Invoice Data, I can see there's no containers here. In Customers, also no containers, and then in products, also no containers, actually one container. But you get the idea of how easy it is to look for your containers. When sorted by type, you simply find the container. Now here comes the easy part. I'm simply going to go over to my database. I'll click cancel for right now, and I'll simply copy the container field, or copy to clipboard what is in the database here, which will actually create the container that I need that will allow it to sync. So I'll go back into Define Database, go to my products, and I'm simply going to paste. Now what that did is it created a sample container or a conversion calculation that is what we need. All I have to do is select my container, highlight, copy the name, and you need to do this for each of your containers, and I will simply rename this particular field to the same name as my existing container, except it has the prefix of this B64, meaning it's a base 64. Now, out of all of FMEasySync, the one important thing to remember is it's doing a lot of its logic based on the prefixes that are associated to FMEasySync. In particular, you can see we've got ES underscore, and we have this B64. Now, we're not finished with this particular container. We actually need to double click, and then I need to take off the quotes that were added as part of a failed import. And what I'm going to do here is since I already copied the field name, I don't actually have to go find it here. I can simply paste it here and paste it here. There's just two values you need to change. One is the actual field reference, and then using FileMaker's base 64 encode, actually put the value in there. Once I've done that with all of my containers, I'm ready to move on to the next step. We're done with 2 out of 8. We need to copy and paste the EasySync table. This is really easy. We go over to our solution, go into Define Database, go into our tables, and click Paste. And we're done. We've got the EasySync in there. Next step. The next step, this is the one that it takes the longest amount of time. But watching this video, it's going to be very easy and will make a lot of sense. When we go into the Define Database, a lot of the time on the relationship graphs, it will already have items created for you. Now, one of the things I like about this FM Recipes database is it allows me to shift this off to the side, and on a much larger monitor, all of the description content right here, I can actually follow along with it. So as I discard right now, what I'll do is I will shift this window off to the side, and I can read all of the information here. In fact, when you have a taller monitor, you can even see all of the steps that you need to follow. This is actually pretty easy because I've done it enough times that I can show you on screen what you're going to need to do. Ultimately, this right here, this FMEasySync, simply needs to be renamed to payloads. You simply add that. You then make a copy of this and you call it payload without the S details. You now are going to create a relationship, and that relationship is between a couple of the keys. It is between parent and child, I believe, or right there is what the link is. ES payload UUID to parent payload UUID. We turn on the allow creation of related records. And now all we need to do is for each and every table that we originally added those fields to, the syncing fields, we simply need a copy of those. In this particular solution, that's going to be a copy of invoices, orders, we have invoice data, we have products, and then we have customers. Now, what I did right there is really worth knowing, and that is I basically held down the option key or the modifier key that allows me to take a copy of a table. Rather than having to click the plus sign and select a table, I have all of the tables that I want. Double click and I can actually rename these to the prefix which I said which was important, ES. So if I double click this and simply copy that ES, this is where things get really easy. Now the purpose for all of these tables is simply so that we can have a place with a dedicated layout and a dedicated table occurrence that FMEasySync is going to know that it can go to as part of its target for its scripts to actually delete records and then also, I believe, create records. You can see that that trick right there, what I did is that table occurrence was named something that was really something I didn't want to take the time to rename. So I simply selected on one table and then selected on the original table that I wanted. FileMaker forces a renaming of that because it is a different table, and then I simply took off the values that I didn't want. And here you can see customers. I'm going to do the exact same thing again. And using my key jumps, I can see that I have my customers, invoices, orders, invoice data, and products. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to connect all of these table occurrences based on the child record ID being connected to. Now, here's a tip. You can see that since I can't see anything on customers, when I hover over this, if I actually hover over this little widget at the bottom, it will actually scroll for me, which it may be worth my time, it may not. One other thing that you can also do is you can actually connect to a bogus field and then simply double-click the relationship in order to connect. So let's do that. Let's pretend. Let's say I just took some random connection, connected to this, and I know that's not the field that I want, but I can always double-click the relationship and then scroll as fast as I want, get to the record ID, click change, and then click OK. So those are the two ways. I could have dragged, select, make the table occurrence scroll until I find the field, or I can connect to a bogus field, double-click the relationship, and then reassign. And here's one of my other time-saving tips when it comes to integration. When you're working with table occurrences, I really like doing things in bulk. If I'm going to expand all of these, I'm going to select all of them, expand all of them, and then simply use FileMaker's positioning tools in order to position them how I want. Now remember that bogus drag? Again, I'm using the child record, but here I'm just going to drag these really quickly, and you can see randomly over here, I'm just dragging them to any random field, purely to make the connection. Double-clicking and then scrolling to the bottom allows me to change these really quickly. So the integration itself does not have to take you a lot of time if you know these time-saving tips that allow you to go pretty fast. And then finally, I have my record ID right here. Now I can select all of these again and bulk close them down so that they show me and I can verify they are all connected to the record UUID. Extremely quick. I'm going to use FileMaker's alignment tools and align those and distribute them. In fact, I will move them so that, and I'll hold down Shift and grab that. I'll align them all so that it all makes nice, easy sense for me. Now, the next step is all of these relationships simply need to have this allow creation turned on. That is, you have your initial connection for FMEasySync, then you have your individual connections to all of the table occurrences where you added the fields that were going to be synced. You simply need to turn on all of these add creations. And once you've done that, you're ready to move on to the next step. That is the updating relationship graph, and this is the step that takes the longest amount of time. Personally, I like to align things up so that I basically put the FMEasySync payloads above the actual syncing details, a resars to largest width. I may shrink this up right here. Getting this all out of the way and down, you can put its own little note if you want. That's basically just a matter of selecting that A and then dragging out right here and say this is FMEasySync integration, and you can basically say what version it is, because as Tim releases new versions, at least you know what version you had integrated at the point in time that you integrated this. You can put all of this off to the side and it pretty much is ready on the relationship graph for you to move on to the next step. Now, before we move on to the very next step, I did want to mention that if you need, you can take a look at the notes at the bottom of this step, the update relationship graph. Again, based on prefixes, all of the scripts in the code that does the syncing can recognize things. And there are prefixes such as ES_push and ES_pull. So if you want the mobile solution, if you're using a separate one or the same, or just a cloned copy of whatever the hosted database is, you can put this in front of any table occurrence where you only want push or pull in order to be supported. But of course, that's all information that you can find out using documentation within the website. And let's go ahead and click completed for that. Now we decide if we want easy deploy. So at this stage, we would actually go over to the easy deploy and start to integrate that, which is right here, a total of 5 steps. I'm not using the easy deploy in this particular database. I'm simply just using the sync and the server. So I'm going to say easy deploy is done. Now I'm going to paste the FMEasySync server script. Now, anytime that you paste anything into any FileMaker solution, there are pretty much 2 places where a very important file is created when you're copying and pasting things between a FileMaker solution. That is called the import log. You can see right here that this import log file was created relative to this file because the file exists on my local hard drive. If I'm copying and pasting into a file that is hosted on a FileMaker server, then FileMaker uses the documents folder of the current logged in user and creates this exact file called import log. Now, the easiest thing to do, at least on a Macintosh and on Windows as well, Windows doesn't have something that is more or less, as far as I know, something that's equivalent to the built-in utility tool called Console. Now, what I like about Console is it has these 2 options of clear display and reload. And also what's really helpful is this ability to search right over here. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can import things, and the way that's promoted on the original FMEasySync documentation is that you simply import the scripts within the Manage Scripts area from one file into another. I'm using copy and paste here. So all I have to do is have this log here available on screen so that I can see whether there's going to be any errors. And there are tools, there are text editors that you can find on Windows that will actually update and refresh as the log itself is changed. So when I switch over to my solution, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to be clicking that I want to copy the FMEasySync server. I'm going to go over to my solution. I'm going to go into my Manage Scripts, scroll towards the bottom, and then I'm simply going to hit Command or Control V. That will paste in the FMEasySync folder with all of its requisite scripts, and all of these scripts referencing all of the other items that are necessary. Table occurrences, tables, layouts, those all need to exist beforehand. In fact, when I switch over to the console, what I'm looking for is right here, scripts imported, 8 of them. And I can see, as a result of all of these steps above here, that there actually were no errors. Nothing says missing, nothing says unknown, invalid, whatever. It was a clean import, which is a good deal. So now I move on to the next step. Let's say that one's completed. I'm going to add an FMEasySync payloads layout. Now this layout probably already exists. When I go into my define layouts or my manage layouts, I can see right here that the FMEasySync payloads was already created. The cool thing about this was that when the FMEasySync table was pasted, it created the corresponding layout for me. If it didn't do that for you, you simply need to create this layout. I'm going to open this layout, and I'm simply going to go into layout mode, and I'm going to select everything and delete. And I'm also going to get rid of the header, and I'm also going to get rid of the body. Now, the original file, you can make the FMEasySync layout look however you want when you see how it actually syncs. But the original files actually had the background as a very dark color, using a very vibrant yellow used in order to show the status. This is basically the status screen that shows you what's happening as a result of the syncing process. Going over to my FM recipes, I simply copy to clipboard, come to this layout, and then I paste. It'll tell me that the layouts will jump off the screen. That's no problem. The screen is made bigger. All of these items off to the side of the screen are necessary for the syncing process, and for the most part, this one text field is simply a global variable that's used in order to constantly update as it walks through all of the different syncing processes. So on this particular layout, if you had something like a web viewer which shows a nice little rotating widget, you could do that. Whatever happens on this screen, this one field is simply going to show you the status of what's going on. It's very simple in terms of its implementation. Switching over, we've done that. That step is now completed, and now we simply need to add deletion layouts. So we go over to our solution, and this is a really easy step. We go into our manage layouts, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this one layout, I'm going to rename it to EasySync. I'll actually select my table occurrence. And basically, this is what I do. I simply name it ES whatever the table occurrences were that I named in the relationship graph for the purpose of supporting deleting records. So let's do customers and say OK. Now, before I duplicate this layout for all of the others, I know that I duplicated based on the EasySync payloads. That means it looks and has all of the exact same items on it. I don't want those. So I'm going to go into layout mode, select everything, delete. I'm then going to actually revert this style back to its original. And I'm simply just going to make it a nice little small 200 pixels. You can even make it really small. Whatever you want to do, these layouts don't actually show as part of the syncing process. So now that I've made the modifications to that particular layout, I'm simply going to duplicate it for all of the others that I want. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, because I believe there's 5 tables. And here's what I'll do is I'll simply select each of these and I would simply rename them, which I will do right now. So as you can see, I've simply made an EasySync folder. I've put all of the layouts in that folder that I want to actually manage. I've got the EasySync payloads. We can see that's loaded and open right there. I have all of the individual layouts that I need for supporting deletes, I believe. I simply select all of those and then I click open at one time. It opens all of them and I can simply then close the windows, verifying that all of the windows look exactly how I want. They're that plain little window, nothing in them, and they're basically ready to go. So we're ready for the next step. Oh, we've completed it. The EasySync server portion has been completed. We now move on to the mobile portion. Now the mobile portion presumes that you would use a separate file. In my files in particular, I've been using both the server and the mobile component because I'm simply making a clone copy of my file and then putting that onto the iPad, knowing that the same file serves both as the hosted version and as the remote version. Now you can see that the very first item is do steps 1 through 4. I already know that that's been done because I integrated the server. Here is where we get into the step that in particular, my database saves a lot of time because there's a lot of time hunting for specific steps that can cause you problems where you need to update things. And you'll see that we will bypass all of those. That's because while I integrate this locally, I create one additional temporary file reference. So the way that this works is all of the scripts that we're going to copy in this very next step 3, these EasySync mobile scripts, they all reference the remote server being able to use the perform script on server step. That one step makes the syncing process or the server-side processing of what's known as the payload being pushed to the file a lot easier. And so if you have FileMaker 13 and you've got perform script on server, that is a big, big advantage, but it needs this hosted database. Now that's where these steps are out of order because you can see that there are all these check ping, check push payload, check the payload, check the sync client. All of these steps can be bypassed if you will simply set up the external data source first. And if you're integrating on the file locally, if you simply have this one additional line, what will happen is we can paste and copy this whole set of scripts without having to do any of these checks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply go over into my solution, go up to the Manage External, that's Manage, and then you go to External Data Sources, and you're simply going to create a new item, which is simply going to be, you need to name it exactly this, hosted_database, because that's what the actual scripts reference. But you're going to put in FMNet and then the IP address where this file is actually going to be hosted. After that, you're simply going to put in file and then the name of the file that you're actually integrating. This one reference means that when I copy and paste those script steps, they will be able to see this same file, and I won't have to go through checking all of these steps in order to make that happen. Then just prior to deployment, I'm simply going to remove this particular item so that the remote copy, well, both copies, the hosted copy and the remote copy that's on an iPad, can actually see the remote IP of the hosted database. All right, so we're ready to move on to the next step. I've created the hosted database external data source, which is referenced by all the scripts. Need to get out of that field, click my completed. I now can add the FMEasySync mobile script. So I'll copy that, go over to my solution, open up the database, close my FMEasySync server, and I'll simply paste, and I get all of my FMEasySync mobile. Now, if everything happens successfully, as part of that paste, I'm able to go over to my console app and basically see that I have 9 steps that were imported right there. You can see that the 9 steps were imported. I'm looking for any errors, which would be this right here, upgrade solution missing, and this one, upgrade solution missing. Now, these 2 errors are a result of me choosing not to use the easy deploy. That's because it integrated a few scripts that it references, 2 in particular, 1 and 2, which aren't actually there. But these errors are no problem. Other than that, those are the only 2 errors, which means I got an error-free paste of all of the steps that are necessary. So I'm going to create a folder called FMEasySync. I'll simply move that above the other 2 and move my 2 sets of scripts in there, close that up, and I'm pretty much done. I have all of my scripts in now for FMEasySync, and all of these steps that are over in my recipes, I've added those script steps. Check the ping server. I don't need to do it because I don't need to look at line 13, line 17. Check the push payload, line 161, 164, 184, 187. I don't need to because I created that external data source of hosted database first before pasting the steps. Check payload. I don't need to check those lines. It all came in successful. Check the sync client. Don't need to do that. That's actually done. Add an FMEasySync payloads object. I know that as a result of doing the server version, that's already in and completed because I'm using the same file for both hosted and mobile. Add deletion layouts. I know that those also already exist in the solution and I'm good to go there. Step number 10, add the sync buttons. This is something that doesn't come as part of the instructions, but it's basically the buttons that perform or link to the scripts that actually do the syncing. So I'll copy those to the clipboard. And in this particular case, I'm going to go into the layout mode. I'm simply going to select and paste. Those 2 sync buttons will come in. I'll basically just leave them free floating right here. Or actually, I'll go ahead and just move one right there, select off of that, and then move the other one right here. I'll then copy both of these buttons because I know that this particular starter solution from FileMaker has a desktop, an iPad, an iPhone, and a web. If I'm doing an iPad, I'll go to the company dashboard for the iPad and I'll simply select and then I'll paste right there. With those buttons already on the layout, I pretty much have the solution completely integrated, and I was able to do that in the course of, as you can already tell, given that I shot this video in about 30 to 40 minutes, in under 30 minutes, because I had a lot of extra information at the beginning of this video. I'll say that that step is completed, and now just before I actually upload the database, the last step that I have is remove the external file reference that we had added for the purpose of being able to copy and paste those script steps. Once I remove that, and as long as the actual file is set to share, which I believe FileMaker's invoices solution is not set to share, but let's go ahead and do that. We'll go to sharing. We will go to share with FileMaker clients. We will actually set the invoices solution to allow network access to the file, specify based on privilege sets. We'll specify that privilege set. We'll say OK. You also have to go into your defined database, or in your managed security, and make sure that that particular privilege set, in this case full access, does have the access via FileMaker network turned on, because that's what will allow my iPad to connect to this particular solution. Once I'm done with all of that, I'm ready to actually host this file and test things out. So let's take a look. Let's see how it works. And so, with having walked through the integration using my FM recipes database, everything went smooth. I didn't have any errors and I got everything in. With my iPad open, with the file having been copied via iTunes, I am ready to actually test things out. I'm going to click the Create Invoice down at the bottom here. We're looking over here at my iPad as I do things. I'm going to create a customer. I don't have a customer. I'll click on the New Customer button. I'll go ahead and enter in some information really quickly. We'll put in ISO, then we'll go to the last name and we'll just put in PETROWSKY and my first name, Matt. You don't need to see me enter in a ton of data. We'll click to close the keyboard, click done. We'll add a new item. We actually don't have a product, so let's go ahead and create a product. I'll hit products down there at the very bottom of that screen. Create a new product. We want to make sure that the picture is actually working. Let's click this. The FileMaker invoices solution, by the way, is actually very nice in terms of being able to get going if you're wanting to do invoices. We'll tap our little picture here, and I'll take a nice little picture of my keyboard. As that comes up and focuses, we'll just click a little snap of that and say use. Make sure that that base 64 of the images are actually going to sync. Going back over to the invoices, let's go ahead and add a new product. We'll get rid of that one. Add a new widget. That has been added. And we'll go back to our dashboard and we'll just click our sync button, see what happens. There is our message. That is that one global merged field. It's a text object. We can see that the sync is complete for our initial payload. And of course, we can go over here to our hosted database, take a look at our invoices. There is our invoice right there. There is our dashboard. There is our customers. If I was to go over to my iPad and just to be sure, go over to customers and actually create a new random customer. Let's just actually leave it called new customer and just go back to our dashboard and click that sync button. It will sync, push the payload, and there we go. Like magic, it pops up right over here on our FileMaker database. The sync has now been integrated. It was quick, it was easy, it's transactional, it's secure, it's powerful, and it's actually amazing that this solution is freely available, and my highest of compliments go out to Tim for providing this solution for those of us building databases where we just can't afford to spend what some of the other syncing providers are wanting for syncing solutions. So there you have it. That is how easy it is to integrate FMEasySync if you're going to use a tool like this FM Recipes. If you're a subscriber, then please tell other FileMaker developers who you know how valuable it is in terms of time savings. I'm providing this tool, even though it took me, 3-4 hours to actually compose and create, but this is a highly valuable tool that you get in terms of time savings. Just a little walkthrough quickly. You can basically add steps to it by going to your own FileMaker database, copying the elements, and then clicking the Add from Clipboard. You can, of course, create as many recipes as you want. I have one other recipe in here, one called Portal Navigation Arrow. We could take a look at see how quickly it is to actually add this. Nav arrow is what I'll call this. Really quick. We do need one relationship, which I'll go over to my fields and I'll say 1, and then I will simply create a self relationship of a cross join to this relationship right here. We'll actually make that the X, the Cartesian product right there, which will show all records. We'll add that field to the database right here of 1. Go into browse mode and we will simply create new records. Let's create a bunch of those. I'll go in and I'll create a quick replace, which I'm doing right there. I'll put in random times, 300. That'll actually give me a good item of numbers. I will actually then go to my portal tool, simply add a copy of my portal right here, nav arrows. I'll turn on the show vertical scroll bar right there, and I'll say OK. We'll actually add that one field, and we'll be able to see all of those records in this database. Add 10 rows right there. Go into browse mode. You can see that all of those records are now there. Now, one of the cool things about this is the fact that many times you may not have access to a particular field. As I hide the field picker, let's say, for example, I don't allow field entry by turning off browse mode and turning off find mode for this particular field in terms of field entry. So when I go into browse mode, selecting on this actually just selects the row. But with a row selected, I would expect that I could use some type of feature like being able to hit the up and down arrow key. Well, let's go over to our database and actually copy those items out. I will copy the custom function. Tells me right there that I'm looking at a custom function. Go over here and actually just paste that in. Keystroke type, no dependencies, already right there. I'll now add the script on layout. It is a script right here. I know where I need to put it. I'll go into my scripts, manage scripts, and I'll paste that right there. I can probably go in and I can check it. I know I don't have any errors because there weren't any dependencies. I can see that right here it says if get active portal row number and get active layout object. Now I had this set to portal icons, but I'm simply just going to call this portal for this simple solution. I do need an object name on the portal that I'm going to actually be supporting, but now I'll just go over. So there are a few things that you need to know. Many times you add these as comments within your actual recipes. And I'll paste in portal right there. And I'll go into browse mode. There's only one other thing I need to do, as we will see right here. I need to add the on layout keystroke trigger to the layout. This is a manual step. Now the reason I do in this particular example use the on layout keystroke instead of using the on object keystroke on the individual portal is that I designed this particular technique to work solution-wide, meaning the script itself, when it's run on the layout instead of on the object, will actually always look for the keystroke. Once we get into the actual script, as I go and select my layout setup, select my script triggers, put the on layout keystroke to this particular item and say OK, it's the script itself, as we saw, as I open the script, that it is specifically looking for the get layout object attribute of a particular object. And you could have as many of these as you would want. So for example, I would right here actually copy this, cut it, we'll actually say and we'd put in parentheses, get layout portal has focus, or, and then paste again, portal dot another, or whatever it is. But this is basically now looking for either of these two portals, and as well as a get active portal row number being selected. And that's exactly what's going to happen right here. So now with this technique all integrated, all I have to do is go into browse mode, select a row, and look at that. I am hitting the arrow keys and I'm getting that to move up and down. I don't have to click. It also supports the home, the end, page up, and page down keys using that custom function. So that's just a little extra in terms of the power that you get out of having a tool like this provided to you as a subscriber. If you are looking to collaborate on a project, if you'd like to add to this, I've got a lot of ideas for this particular file, and I'm looking for people that might want to collaborate with me on this solution as I round it out and make it even a little bit more valuable. So as always, I'd like to wish you much luck with your own FileMaker development, and until next time, happy file making.